Hi, my name is Carl Valeri, and welcome to Aviation Careers Podcast, the inspirational, informational, transparent podcast about aviation careers. You know, there's a real shortage of air traffic controllers, and I know we've talked about it a lot on this channel, but there's a real renewed interest for air traffic controllers and also the career. I have with me somebody who's been on the show before to talk about the pros and the cons. We're going to do this episode about the pros and why you should become an air traffic controller. His name is George Harper. He's an air traffic control manager, and we're definitely going to discuss all the really cool things about being an air traffic controller. George, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Carl. It's nice to be back.
Yeah, this is awesome. It's really been interesting to see the progression of air traffic control and also the career. And by the way, did a great video on what it's like to be an air traffic controller. We have that now, the link on YouTube, and that was really helpful. Very simple.
It's a lot of fun.
Helpful. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And also, episode 285, we talked a lot about what it's like to be an air traffic controller. And by the way, if you have questions, feedback at aviationcareerspodcast.com, and I'll send them over to George. What we're going to do is basically I have a list of the 10 things why you should become an air traffic controller. I'm going to read them out, and then and George is also going to give us some color to it. So here we go. The 10 reasons you should become an air traffic controller. And number one is an office with an amazing view.
Boy, you're not kidding. And there's something to be said for that. You know, it's a different environment. And, you know, we say an office with a view. I guess it does depend a little on which side of the air traffic control spectrum you're working. If you're in a radar room, it's impressive equipment, it's impressive technology, maybe not quite the view. I'm a tower guy, so for me, it's an office with a view. I mean, the sunrises, the sunsets, being able to watch planes fly all day long, you know, actually see, you know, what's going on. It's definitely an added benefit.
You know, you do get this really cool bird's eye view, similar to airplanes. I tell people, you just the tower is not moving. Well, hopefully it's not moving, but
as long as the wind is less than 35 knots, we're pretty stable.
And that must be a little bit scary too, being up there. We're going to talk about that in the 10 reasons you may not want to be.
Right, but that's part of the fun too, you know, because when you see the weather coming in, especially in a place like here in Florida, you've got these large thunderstorms that'll roll in, and you know, from the ground you can see the big gray cloud coming, and then it's raining. But from the tower, you can see the storm literally as it's, you know, starting. Watch it build, and as it comes, you can see the storm approaching you and how it's affecting an area. But yet, if you look just a little bit farther, just like being in an airplane, you can see there's a whole lot of unaffected area right in the same way. And then to watch that wall of water come right up over top of the tower, and the lightning strikes, you see them all. You know, it's neat. It's a lot of fun.
That sounds impressive. It'd be some great shots, that's for sure. So that's the number one reason, an office with an amazing view. The number two reason to become an air traffic controller is that you're home every day.
Right. And I beat a lot of my pilot friends in that respect. At Punta Gorda here, Allegiant Airlines, I think most of these guys are based out of Punta Gorda, get to come home every night. But in most flying jobs, as you well know, Carl, and most of the listeners, that's not the case. And sometimes even when it's the plan, it doesn't always end up being the case.
Absolutely.
You know, weather, mechanic, I mean, it's all kinds of stuff, but it is nice every day getting up knowing you're going to be able to go home for dinner. So there's definitely an advantage there.
Yeah, something to be said there. I'm about to go away on a 4-day trip, and if something happens with the plumbing, I'm not there to fix it. So that's something you get to do, is you can be right home right away and fix it. So that's really cool. So that's the number two, home every day. Number three reason to become an air traffic controller is pay and benefits. And I'm going to add a little bit of color to this because, as you know, I like to always quote the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and there is a lot of job growth there. In the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the median income for an air traffic controller, through all air traffic controllers, is $137,380, and that's throughout the system. So as far as pay and benefits, maybe you could add some color, and does that number make sense?
Well, the number definitely makes sense. I've got friends in all spectrums of air traffic control, from small level 1 towers, you know, working VFR, like the contract tower world. I've got friends at Atlanta Center. I've got friends from Cleveland Center. So I've seen both sides of it. I've had really close friends work Chicago O'Hare, where they were working a lot of overtime. So the 137,000 is definitely a really good, you know, median mark. Most controllers within that first year or at that year mark, once they get their first qualifications, will see a 6-figure income. So, even if you're not, well above that, now if you're at a large facility or a busy facility, one of the large centers, New York Center, Chicago O'Hare, um, you can make considerably more than that. And if you're at a facility or you want to make the overtime, you're adding more on top of that. It's definitely not a bad profession to be in.
And on the other side of that, it's not just about the pay. There's some great benefits, retirement benefits also, correct?
There are, depending on which area of air traffic control you're operating. If you're working for the agency and the FAA, the benefits are outstanding. It's a full government job. You've got a great government retirement. You've got all the medical benefits. I wish I knew the specifics to them, but as a contract tower and former military controller, that hasn't been my profession. So, but I do know from multiple friends that have come, to the control towers that I've worked at that were former FAA controllers or retired controllers. The retirement benefits are great. The benefits while you're in are outstanding. Excellent leave, vacation. The union's well represented. It is. It's hard to beat. I mean, any government job, as far as benefits goes, is going to be top notch.
Absolutely. And for those that don't understand, not all towers and facilities are government. So you actually work for a contractor, and there's large contractors throughout the country, correct?
There is. And so you have the Federal Aviation Administration, which runs all of the FAA facilities. And there's a Federal Contract Tower Association. The Federal Contract Towers are going to be the level 1 towers throughout the system. I believe there's 256 total. Don't quote me on that, but it's got to be pretty close. There's quite a few, and they range in pretty much every state, so there's localities all around. The Federal Contract Tower world, we still have to be FAA certified. We have to meet the same monthly updated training requirements. We perform by the exact same set of rules. Everything is no different on the job, on the air traffic control side. The difference is simply, in the hierarchy of the pay and all that. The contractor companies, bill the FAA obviously for the contract that they're fulfilling, and then those contractors pay us. But it is still an outstanding job. In the VFR towers, every controller I know usually has a preference between radar control or tower control. And the VFR towers for a tower controller are really a lot of fun. It's you don't always know exactly what to expect from some of the GA people out there flying. Some folks fly every day, some folks fly once every 5 or 6 weeks. So those guys flying once every 5 or 6 weeks may not be as proficient as the guys that fly every day. We have training students constantly learning. So there's constantly flight students in the system working the VFR towers. Obviously, they haven't, gotten their license yet, so they're not quite there. It adds to the complexity, but also adds to the fun. It definitely, and it becomes a really unique environment where the pilots and the controllers tend to know each other a little bit better than in the large facilities where, everyone's just a number.
Wow, that's some great color. I appreciate that. And, as a matter of fact, I'm sure we're going to get a lot of questions about that, all the differences, and we could talk forever about the differences between the facilities. But that's, and it's interesting to hear feedback from other controllers as to why they like their facilities. And that's, it's fascinating to hear the reason why they went into this job, but also the reason why they're at a specific facility, just like that you gave color too. And speaking of which, that kind of brings us to the number 4 reason to become an air traffic controller, and that's that it's intellectually stimulating.
That it is. From the episode you mentioned before, where we kind of gave a brief glimpse of what it's like to be an air traffic controller, if anyone wants to, know what we mean by intellectually stimulating, reviewing that episode 285 might be a good one. It has its challenges. Everyone always refers to air traffic control as one of the most stressful jobs in the world, and to be honest, I don't know many jobs out there that don't have the opportunity to be stressful. It does take a different personality type to work in air traffic controller, but the intellectual stimulation, you have complex problems you're solving every day, things that keep the mind working and are challenging, and those are things that definitely add to the interest of air traffic.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, by the way, it's so much fun to watch those videos, but also there's some really cool simulators online. The Flight Sim Association
Absolutely.
has them like VAT Sim and things like that. You can actually hear people that are hobbyists that actually come from the air traffic control environment to learn about talking ATC and using the correct terminology and phraseology. So anyway, number 4, that was intellectually stimulating. Number 5 is that there's something different every day.
And that's another thing that I love about our job. If you're going to wash your car, you start out with a dirty car, right? And when you wash the car's clean. You can sit back and look at the job you did and see a physical difference and feel that sense of accomplishment. And in air traffic, we have that same type of thing. We'll have 8 or 9, 10 airplanes all flying inbound same time, 3 or 4 departures, maybe a couple more taxiing out, and we've got this sort of complex, issue to deal with. Who's number one? Who's number two? Um, and you make a few transmissions, you get a couple people into the pattern, you work with the wind, you get everyone set up, a few departures. By the time they all line up and land, and then you see everything settle back down again, you see the aircraft taxiing into the ramp, you can actually see your job being completed. And it is it's the rewarding side, and it's different every day. Everyone might come from the east because they went out to Okeechobee for breakfast. Well, tomorrow they might all go to the Venice, so they'll be coming from northwest here at Punta Gorda. Every airport's like that. Some days the wind is out of the north, some days the wind's out of the south. So each day you come to work, you're not doing the mundane same exact task every single day. Runways change, airplanes change. You've got big planes, slow planes, fast planes, occasional emergencies. It's something different every day, and that's what makes it a lot of fun.
I kind of that leads into the next thing, actually, at number 6, that it's truly can be an adrenaline rush, can it?
Oh, without a doubt. When you have a 3 or 4 airplanes just doing some touch and goes, the excitement level may not be as high as when you have 6 or 7 airplanes from different areas. Maybe one of them with a radio issue, and next thing you know, someone calls up, we've got smoke in the cockpit. Now you've got a potential emergency situation. How bad is it? You have to find out how many people are on board. Where's the fuel? Can they make the runway? You start planning off the radio for response. So the adrenaline rush is absolutely there. Sometimes it's an emergency situation. Sometimes that adrenaline rush comes when you've got those 3 or 4 guys doing touch and goes in the pattern. So you're already running, a moderate operation on the runway, and you have a few departures. And next thing you look up, and 10 or 12 folks that all went out to Okeechobee for breakfast all come back at once. So the adrenaline rush kicks in good when you go from 3 airplanes to 15 airplanes all within a matter of 4 minutes. And the first guy that calls is usually like the 5th or 6th guy in line trying to be the first guy to get here. So it's definitely has that adrenaline rush factor.
That kind of leads into the next thing. And one of the things that I think a lot of people complain about in their jobs is it's really boring. But the number 7 reason to become an air traffic controller is that it's challenging.
It is very challenging. It's almost like a complex math problem. And it's not the same math problem every day. You have, one airplane on final doing 60 knots at 5 miles. You've got another airplane out there that just checked in with you at 10 miles doing 180 knots. So he's doing 3 times the airspeed, but only has 2 times the amount of space to get to the runway. So now you have an issue to solve. Well, imagine having 9 or 10 of those issues all at once. And you've got to figure out who's number 1, who's number 2. In this scenario here, the first aircraft is obviously slower. So it's going to be better to sidestep him or let the jet go by and follow him in. But the problem is, if you sidestep him or turn him off, how does he affect those other 8 or 9 guys? So the complexity is where the challenge comes in, and it's fun to find your limits and then learn where your limits are, and that's the part that really makes it a lot of fun.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. I mean, at least there's, you're not bored. You're really challenged every day. Like a lot of people complain about certain jobs, like flying airplanes. You're sitting there at, 37,000 feet with autopilot, and you get a little bit bored, but that's definitely not the case in air traffic control. The other cool thing about the career, and the number 8 reason why you should become an air traffic controller, it truly is an elite career, and it's well respected by everybody.
It is. It's a professional job for sure, and it's a level of responsibility that it definitely puts you on par with other professional careers. It's the same as being a pilot. You're responsible for a lot of folks all at once. As an air traffic controller, you are as well. Um, when you meet people, and they hear you're an air traffic controller, they're like, oh, well, so it's rewarding. It's nice to have that level of respect, but that respect also has to be earned. So, going into air traffic control, you have to know that it is a prestigious job as far as that goes. You're going to be well respected in the community among other professional peers. And it's one more great reason to be an air traffic controller. It's a good feeling. It's a comforting feeling to be on that level.
Yeah, and with that respect, of course, comes a lot of responsibility too, especially in the way you act and when you're telling somebody you're a
Absolutely.
traffic controller, even out in socially too. So you have to be on your toes there. But yeah, so it absolutely is a hats off to you guys what you do, and I think it's like you said, it's very challenging, and it is a elite career. Not everybody can do it. And that's for sure. But the other cool thing, we talked about some of these online forums and places you can go like VATSIM and stuff like that. Well, the number 9 reason we talked about is as far as being an air traffic controller is you actually become a professional video gamer pretty much.
Right. And that would be leaning a little more towards the radar control, working approach control, center control, where you're in front of a screen. And depending on your facility and which sector you might be, working, very busy airports like Chicago O'Hare and their approach control might have multiple sectors with smaller areas because there's such a volume of airplanes. Each person can only talk to so many airplanes so fast. And then you get into large centers, Minneapolis Center, for instance, they might have 700 miles in a sector. So you could be talking to quite a few airplanes stretched over a very large part. But air traffic control is going to be the same whether you're working center at 35,000 feet or tower, in the sense that you're still separating airplanes. So you've got, 4 or 5 airplanes flying from the East Coast to the West Coast, another 5 or 6 coming from the West Coast to the East Coast, and you have to make sure we got the altitudes, set up. As you know, up at altitude, you guys are running 400 plus knots, 2 airplanes opposite direction, 800 plus knots. That's a closure rate that can make a difference really, really fast. And you guys will not see each other probably at 35 or 40 miles apart, but you will within about a minute and a half.
Absolutely.
So, so the center controller is looking at a radar screen with all the targets on it, and people could Google it and get an idea on what it looks like. And you're solving complex scenarios, trying to route all those airplanes, get them in order. The approach control radar controllers will usually set up a sequence and vector airplanes towards approaches to the runways, and then the tower controller finalizes that sequence and assures the runway separation. So it's all part of a big, well-orchestrated team, and the radar control is definitely the elite gamer of the bunch.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's pretty quick. I mean, I've sat there and done an observation. I was like, whoa! You have to.
Right.
What's wild is how you have to be able to in your mind place people and planes and directions and that type of thing. It just blows my mind, that's for sure. I just have to go in one direction. People tell me where to go, which is kind of easier. Absolutely, really interesting though.
Until you find the dirty air, right?
Absolutely, until you find the dirty and that's a little bit different. But that is rewarding, and there are different parts of air traffic control like we talked about before, and I really highly recommend people to take a look and look at some of the links that we have down below as far as with different jobs in air traffic control. We're going to have a lot more of this in the future because I think it's a wonderful career. But the number 10 reason I feel that you should become an air traffic controller, and I think George also agrees, is that it's really a rewarding career and you truly are keeping people safe.
It absolutely is. And here at Punta Gorda, for instance, I'll just use the little microcosm of our little airport. It was uncontrolled until we opened the tower here. So we were here staffing for almost a month before the tower went live. So we had the advantage of watching the uncontrolled airport operate and how the aviators were getting in and out of the airfield. And then as the tower came in, watching what we could do to improve safety. Most uncontrolled airports, the pilots, don't really want a tower in there, bothering their little operation. A lot of pilots feel the air traffic controllers are trying to, or might get them in trouble, and that's not our job. Our job is to separate aircraft to provide a service to the pilots, getting them in and out safely. So to be able to watch that transition go from uncontrolled to controlled is a big difference. And that's where it's really rewarding. And it's same as to be had, during an emergency. I've had, multiple in my career, and then to have that pilot call afterwards and say, I was really nervous. I had a lot of stuff going on. I was really not sure how this was going to turn out. And to have that calm, cool voice on the other side, helping me out, helping me make that decision, making sure there's nobody in my way so I can do whatever it is that I need to do. We had an aircraft down in Key West that had, gear locked up in the Barren, so he was going to land without gear. We were able to coordinate with the Navy base. We had 6,000 feet of foam put out, so he didn't have to worry about a lot of sparks. There's a lot we can do on our side, but to be on the backside of those emergency situations and knowing the difference you made. And the same thing is even when it's not emergencies. If you have a busy hour, we're a little airport, but we've had over 80 operations in a single hour before. That's an acceptance rate that's not far off anywhere. We don't do it all day long every day, but we're doing it, with pilots that aren't all traveling the same speed, don't all have the same level of training. It's a challenge. It's a different challenge. My friend that I worked here with for years was 20 plus years at Chicago O'Hare, and he goes, "Boy, we're not Chicago O'Hare Airport." He goes, "But we have our Chicago O'Hare moments." And it's very rewarding, to see a mess of a ton of airplanes all trying to get in, and to know that you can make a few transmissions and plans and work it out and get everyone in and out safe, to where they want to go. And it's, like I mentioned with the car wash, it's rewarding because you see your job getting finished. And, when you're done, you get to hear, the thank yous from the pilots. And because they always thank us because
We do.
It is. And that's where the rewarding factor comes in, when you can actually see your job being accomplished.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. George, these are some great reasons to become an air traffic controller. If someone has questions, feedback at aviationcareerspodcast.com. I'll send them over to George. We'd love to have you back on. As a matter of fact, we're going to have you back on to talk about the 10 reasons not to become an air traffic controller. You could also call them the cons of being an air traffic controller. Some people may find that those cons are actually pros. So we'll talk about that later. But George, thanks again, and appreciate everything you do.
Oh, my pleasure.
And if you're somebody who's interested, or somebody who's interested in becoming an air traffic controller, please share this video with them, share this audio podcast with them. And if you're trying to decide what to do with your career, we provide career coaching. aviationcareerspodcast.com/coaching. But one of the most important things I want you to do is, if you're thinking about becoming an air traffic controller or anything else in the aviation world, is don't stop at this point. When you hit stop on this video, this audio, just take a step every day to move forward in your career by maybe looking something up about air traffic control. Look up VATSIM. Check out some of those videos we talked about. Listen to other podcasts. Listen to YouTube. Watch YouTube videos. But do something today to move forward in your career and in your life, and you will get to your destination faster than you think. We'll talk to you next episode. Safe flying out there.